Alright, welcome back. As you can see, I've got the detail, not really detail, but much of the shapes painted on. Went ahead and put some interesting patterns and shapes together here. What I've added to it since the last video is made the detail around the top. Went ahead and put a pattern on the lid. Details around the mouth and nose. This is just a continuation of what we looked at yesterday. What I'm ready for now is a third color, which is going to be a major pattern on the back side of it. And I've mixed up my color, and since this is already predominantly green, I'm going to stay with green, but I've mixed black with a little bit of green. I will say this, it's usually almost always advantageous to use colors blended. You know, the colors straight out of the bottle or box or whatever are less interesting than colors that you mix up and add visual interest that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint some details with this, but I'm going to paint the inside of the mouth. The mouth is a real simple shape. I'm just going to make a dark area inside the mouth to give it some depth. And then I'm going to mix up some white again, probably with green, so that I can put some highlights on here. But first, let's go ahead and we're going to put that shadow in the mouth. And I paint the line for the right side by going through the left side, and that allows the point of the brush to make the line. And it allows it to be pretty smooth. And that is proving to be the case. You can see right inside there that brush is just making a nice clean edge. I shouldn't even have to touch it up. It's always good to use plenty of paint on your brush. You don't want it dripping too much, but this paint is really thick, so it's not really in any danger of that. And this just adds a little depth and dimension, I guess you could say. It doesn't add a whole lot of anything, but every little detail that you add, especially if they're clean and carefully done, just makes the tiki look that much better. I'm being real careful while I'm doing this to try and not just randomly get paint on anything. That sometimes is a consideration. We'll pull the paint all the way across. Now we'll do the same thing coming in from the other side and paint this side. You can kind of see what's going on there. I guess you can see painting that inside line from the opposite side gives me a lot of control over the length and shape of that line. There we go. Come all the way around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this same black to add a detail to the eye, but I'm going to use a little bit smaller brush with a little bit finer point. It's not absolutely necessary, but I have it, so may as well use it. Use the tools you have. If you don't have them, well, you know, you make do, but as it happens, I have that tool, so I will use it. That's not as tidy as I want. Let's put a little more paint on the brush. There we go. Come on now. There we go. I don't know if that shows up in the video, but you can see the inside of the mouth. I've left a line around the inside where I might paint in teeth. Haven't decided what I'm going to do about that. If I mix up white and green, that might be how I do that. Usually for painting teeth, I don't try and paint the whole tooth. I just paint a white line and it kind of simulates it, you know, your mind kind of fills in the gap. And sometimes I do paint in individual little shapes. It's kind of hit or miss. You can't really, I just kind of go with what works. Oftentimes that white line is a result of a little paint boo-boo, and it's like, you know what, I'll just carry it all the way around, and it works. So I've got that inside of the mouth painted. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a shape under the eye here, just to give that definition shape. And I'm mixing my paint up still. This paint, just like the rest of the paint, I've mixed it with the brush right in the little cup here, and it isn't perfectly mixed. There are streaks of green and black that are unmixed in it, and I like that. That's a desirable, that's not a bug, that's a feature to me. Notice that as I'm painting this on here, I'm leaving space. I'm leaving this darker green and the lighter green. I'm not actually painting over either of them with this black green. There will be a little line between them. And that just helps to kind of define that shape for me. Always point the bristles at the line that you want to paint. And it gives you control over your line. It makes it pretty, I don't know if that's real visible or not, but it's real clean. Oop, just, that's me being dumb. Just put my thumb right inside there. I don't think it's going to leave a mark, so I'll just, well, maybe it did. We'll just fix that. So we'll keep going. Actually, let's increase the size of this ever so slightly. You can always make it bigger, but once you've made it bigger, it's there. It's hard to shrink up the shape, and I made mine a little small to start with. So I'm going to add a little to it. Oops. I guess I'm going to take it closer. There, that actually looks pretty good. There we go. And there you can see the two eyes. Maybe you can see the black just adds a sort of visual interest under it. I'm going to do the other side now, exactly the same way. Start with the top of it. A little Bob Marley going in the background there. I don't know if y'all can hear that or not. We're going to paint that line. That side's a little bigger. Let's make this one a little bigger. A little closer up there. Just a reminder, you can always make it bigger, but once you've made it, it's there. Of course, this is an acrylic paint, so it's, if I make a boo-boo, I actually can I can wipe most of it off if I get it before it dries. Sometimes it stains, sometimes it doesn't. But there it is. There's the black work on the front of it, done. I'm going to add some small line details probably to this one, much like I did the brown tiki that you saw the other day or yesterday. And I'll probably do that with a paint marker, but the bulk of this, it's done. I'm going to add some shapes on the back, and I will detail those again with the paint marker, but the shapes themselves are going to be pretty limited. I'm going to paint here in the top of it. Fix that so y'all can see what's going on here. I'm just going to Always trying to be mindful of the lines that are existing in the shapes, in the forms I should say, and that allows me to, I'm complementing each of those shapes with additional shapes. This shape here is going to be a complementary shape for this kind of organic shape in the top of it. There we go. Didn't have enough paint on my brush, makes it a little harder. And there we go. Paint this line a little cleaner. One thing to be conscious of, especially with thick paint, is your brush will leave brush marks in the paint, and if you don't want that, you can kind of, after you've got the paint all on, what I do typically is I'll just paint right over it, with being conscious of the direction of the brush, and that kind of gives you the look that it gives me the look that I'm looking for. Just that dark shape in there. And that's it. I'm going to be done with that. So I will now do the back. I'm just going to add some more shapes. I'm going to make these shapes fairly large because I don't want it to be crazy busy. In fact, since they're going to be large, I'm going to use the larger brush. I can get more paint on there, and this process doesn't take nearly so long. I'll paint the big part of the shape, and then I'll probably come back and clean up the shape's edges. Always being conscious of my form. That is to say, the three-dimensional structure. I'm trying to complement it and accentuate it and make it look more interesting, not just randomly place things on it. So while this is, there is a certain randomness to it, the conscious thought here is to make it more beautiful, if you will, with this choices of shapes. And I'm going to leave that one kind of separate. If you look on the back of this, you'll see that the eyebrows here arrive at different heights kind of in the back, and that could present problems if I were worried about it, but I'm not. And I've started to make kind of a square here, and because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it kind of a shield shape, and use that shield shape to accommodate that change in the height. That way it's not really noticeable from the back. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having them different, because variety is the spice of life, isn't it? I'm going to now make some more shapes, and these shapes will be some kind of business in my paint. Get that out of there. And I'm leaving a pretty good size line. You can see I'm making a light colored line between my shapes by virtue of just leaving a space. Went from Bob Marley to something I don't recognize. I guess it's still kind of reggae, but I don't know. All right. Let's see, I'm making more shapes on the back here. gonna see what develops. Being able to move this guy around, you always want to be careful and not put your finger in the paint like I just did on the top. Just wipe that off. I'm a little absent-minded, so that I often do that. I try and incorporate into my execution anyway the ability to handle it, because I know I'm going to touch it and do something that messes with it. So if you know that going in, you can make allowances for it. That's what I did. This paint is really thick, so it's leaving a lot of texture, which I'm not entirely happy about, but I've decided I'm going to live with it. So you can kind of see what's going on there. I'm going to make the neck shape really big and just fill the entire space, or a big space. And I'm not just making random blobs here, I'm actually fitting it to the shape that exists here, and I'm going to leave some space, and I am going to make them fairly crisp edged, and that kind of adds visual interest. There we go. You can see I'm developing a pattern back here that's relatively interesting, I think, and it leaves room for other stuff, which may or may not develop. We'll just have to see. Wants to have a little triangle there. I'll paint that with a smaller brush. I'm leaving a fairly wide gap between these two shapes that I'm about to paint, because I'm going to paint maybe a white or different color piece in there.